Hi guys, this is Joe Palumbo from Vice Athletics, and what we wanted to do is go over our dynamic warm-up today. More focused why we do it. So the first piece that we want to think about is warming up the body from a physiological standpoint. So the exercises that we're going to progress you through today are a step-by-step process to do that. So warming up the body, we loosen up the joints, loosen up the muscles, which reduces our chances for injury. The other side of it, I think, that requires a lot of focus is the neuromuscular and the mental component. So that's the other purpose of our dynamic warm-up. We're trying to get the brains to warm up and trying to get our brains and bodies to connect. And then from that standpoint, it leads into preparatory work for competition. So it serves both of those purposes as we move forward. We don't take it lightly. We try a dynamic warm-up with purpose. And from a strategy standpoint, we're going to head into that in the next section. So the strategy standpoint from an implementation is I want to know where I'm doing this dynamic warm-up. And I realize environments change, weather changes, so I want to be keenly aware of what's going on in my environment. The dynamic warm-up that we're going to go over today is I'm making an assumption that we're doing this outside on a turf field and that we have a team of individuals working towards a certain goal. So from that standpoint, I've got enough square footage to work with as far as being able to work in lines and organized. If I'm in a tighter environment, I think differently about that strategy. But it's easy enough to kind of think through these exercises as it relates to being outdoors. So from this point forward, everything that we're going to be moving and prepping towards is an outdoor dynamic warm-up. Thanks. All right guys, so the first exercise that we're gonna do is called a squat reach. And easily as we're working with groups of teams, it's kind of the easy, most basic one to start with. So I'm gonna ask our athlete to stand with his feet shoulder width or maybe just outside of his hips. The first thing that we wanna do is crease at the hip. So we're gonna sink and hinge into your hips as deep as you can on your heels. So I'm gonna have him go ahead and start that process. So go ahead and sink and hinge as deep as you can. At the bottom, we're gonna have them grab their toes and then straighten out their legs, stretching out their hamstrings and low back and returning all the way up to a standing position. So we'll repeat that cycle and I'll have Ariel go through a couple repetitions here to kind of finish out the set. But we'll usually repeat that cycle for a set of 10. It's the first thing that we do. It's the most basic primal movement that we can throw at these guys. And then we go from there. So as our athlete's finishing up our squat stretches, squat reaches, I'm gonna have him, so I'm imagining again, I'm outdoors on a turf, and I'm gonna have him go right into just an athletic skip. So now what we're thinking about is we do not wanna be lazy on this athletic skip. We wanna think about driving through the knees, easily swinging the arms and relaxing at the shoulders and staying on our toes. And you can pick your distance. We would usually run for about 20 to 25 yards down and then 20 to 25 yards back. So as our athlete's coming back from his 20-yard skip, we're going right into our straight leg kicks. So again, on this one, we're gonna keep the same distance. We're gonna work for about 20 yards. And what we're trying to focus on the straight leg kick, we are gonna mobilize the hamstrings. We're trying not to lurch on this one or arch. We want to keep a good neutral spine as we move down the field. The tendency here, Ariel, can you show them the one where they do the 10 steps in between? The tendency is to get lazy and they take the 10-stepper in between. So do not let them do the 10-step in betweens. It's every single step is a kick. And that keeps them mentally focused on the task. And it really helps to mobilize the hamstring and get the core engaged. This should start to get their heart rates up. All right, so our athlete's coming back from his 20 yards of straight leg kicks, and we're gonna go right into a karaoke. And so again, we're picking up the tempo again. We're keeping our 20-yard distance. We're thinking about turning over the hips, staying on his toes, and relaxing the shoulders. Again, keep the hips square as you move down and back through your 20 yards. All right, so coming in for our karaoke, we're going right into our lunge opens. Definitely one of the most technical stretches that we're gonna implement here today. So the focus, again, is sinking onto the front heel. A lot of our athletes have hip mobility problems, hamstrings, so they get up on their toes. Really emphasize sinking into the hip and heels. From that down position, we're gonna reach inside the lead arch and then open the hips and shoulders away, which we get a full stretch on the hips and the chest and the shoulder. And again, you can kind of see his alignment as he's marching downfield. Some of the common things that we see incorrectly, we just call it the yoga pose here. So a lot of times we'll get our kids and they just post the back leg and they're not really sinking into the hips at all. So it's a yoga stretch more than it is an athletic lunge stretch position. The other thing we see commonly is they'll get the toes internally rotated, which again will then push their knee inside. And that is actually a weak position from a hip standpoint and glute standpoint. From an injury prevention standpoint, we are trying to do everything we can to strength train out of that position. So we do not want to reinforce it on a lunge. So pay close attention to those because they'll get lazy. So finishing up our lunge open set as he gets back to the start line, we're going to go right into our hip mobility over-unders. So we're going to square up. We're going to drive the knees up over the belly button, drop into the hips, and slide. So as we march through this, we are really trying to be as mechanical as possible. So got to keep the hips square, got to keep the feet square. And I want to reach out to the inside edge of that lead foot. Yep, and so again, drive the knees, sink, and slide. We'll go down 20. And come back, stay facing the same direction so that way you come back to your left. All right, so the progression, as our athletes coming out of our over-unders, basically we're coming back to the goal line, let's say. And so now we want to break down a 5-yard and a 15-yard interval. So we just call these shorty skips. So it's a skip, but we're trying to focus on taking short, choppy strides forward. We're still trying to focus on getting the knees up and swinging the arms as we go through this skip progression. But Arrow, if you want to start, and really what we're trying to get is the knee drive, so he's not even moving forward yet, and then start to progress forward just an inch at a time. So we're getting some foot contacts, and then once he gets to the 5-yard line, he's going to accelerate and just stride through. So again, we just want to lengthen out the stride, not sprint, but just accelerate and take 3 powerful strides. So again, shorty skip, really easy, fluid, relax through the arms, get maximum foot contacts before you get to the 5-yard line, and then accelerate once you get to the 5. Don't turn it into a race, but just have some fun with it. All right, so we just came out of our shorty skips, and again, from a repetition standpoint, we do 4 to 6 of those, so down and back, 2 or 3 times. So they're gonna get 4 lengths to 6 lengths of those skips. We're gonna move right back into a push-up position, alligator open. So in this one, again, our heart rates are up from the skips and we're trying to bring them back down and work on the hips. So from that position, we're gonna start in a push-up. We wanna ask our athlete to drive his heel up to his hand. And then in that position, we're gonna open up the hips and shoulders again and stretch. So really focus on lengthening out your entire body. You should get a great stretch on the left side if your right leg is up towards your hand. And then we alternate back to the beginning and repeat. I always focus and emphasize on getting onto the front heel. So as he drives that foot, drive the knee and sit on the heel. The other component is that they want to get lazy and they want to just run through it. I always try and re-engage the core as they step back to their push-up position. So re-engage core, drive the knee, drive the foot, and then open from there. Got it. So we're already down into a push-up position. He finished up his alligator opens. We're gonna pop up on the one knee and we're gonna work on some shoulder mobility. So from this position, it doesn't matter which knee. We'll usually do 5 reps on one knee, 5 reps on the other. But what you're trying to do is keep a good neutral spine. I would start with my elbows and wrists together. And what we ask them to do is scoop their hands over their head, keeping their forearms together as long as they can. So they're gonna open up their shoulders and then drive back down and through, and then come back around the opposite direction. We're gonna pull the hands together, pull the forearms together as quickly as you can, and drive it down. So commonly, a lot of what we see is a lack of range of motion in the shoulder. So really we're trying to emphasize keeping the forearms together as long as possible. The other thing that we commonly see is they're either going to reach back with their hips and kind of get lazy on it and sit forward, or they're going to arch their spines through this. So we don't want to reinforce the arch spine. We want to keep their spine neutral and just really get them to focus on the muscles that are actually working to open up their shoulders. All right, so moving on from here, and remember we just did 2 exercises back to back that were a little bit slower, so we're driving the heart rate back down, but working on mobility. So we're gonna pop up from that position and go right into our jump wides. And we're gonna start with just doing a set of 20 reps. And again, we're reinforcing kind of the plyometric implementation, opening up our hips. But what we'll do is we start again with our feet a little bit closer. We're gonna jump wide with our feet and sink and hinge into our hips and then pop back up to the middle. So again, the focus, we wanna sink and get some depth. We don't want to disappear at the hips. And so we always ask them if we could, when they're doing it, we want to be able to see their logos on their t-shirts. We got to be able to see their eyeballs. The other thing that we commonly see on this exercise is they go too deep. So they'll go too deep and get their butts to their heels. We want to avoid that. We want to stop at parallel, but keep tension in the hips and then drive back to the top. And again, you can easily do this for duration. You can do it for repetitions. If you have a team, you guys can all do them together and count 20 out loud before we go into our next drill. All right, so we're just coming out of our jump wides. And again, we're gonna square everybody up and we're gonna do a couple of slides. And again, I wanna keep feet square, and then open, turn, and accelerate. The focus here, again, we're trying to keep the heart rate elevated and we're gonna continue to open up the hips, get the core kick on, and loosen up the ankles. So coming out of our last shuffle acceleration, we're just gonna do a couple of inline acceleration ramp ups here. So I'm gonna have them just set, go, and then accelerate, accelerate, accelerate. We're really trying to focus on taking long strides. I'm gonna get to the 20 and then back pedal. And again, we're not taxing them and we don't wanna go maximally, but we do wanna get the intensity starting to ramp up. So we're asking them to cover 20 yards in just powerful long strides and then staying on their toes as they backpedal. Okay, so what we wanted to do at this point was sync all of these together. So we're gonna do an abbreviated version. There's not much coaching here, but I want you to imagine aerial kind of outside on a turf field moving in space and how all of these integrate. So we'll go ahead and start with a squat reach aerial, and I'm going to take you through this. We're just going to hit a couple sets, couple reps, and then head right into your athletic skips. So we're then going to drive the knees. Let's imagine he went down and back, and we're going to go ahead and straight leg kick. And as he straight leg kicks, we're going to march it back downfield. And as he changes directions, we're going to go right into a karaoke. Lunge open is next. And I'm just going to have you do a couple strides aerial and switch midstream. And then we're going to go right into an over-under. And then a shorty skip acceleration. Got it. So we're moving right into our groundwork. So we're going to hit an alligator, open, to a kneeling shoulder drive here. And again, we're going right into our shoulder mobility set. Super easy to do. Everything's tied together. Got it. I'm going to have you pop up. We go right into our set of jump wides. 1 and 2 reps. You got it. And then we're going to go lateral slide, accelerations, open the hip, turn and go. And then the last one would be our stride out acceleration. So we're going to drive, 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 decelerate, stop, and then back pedal, back pedal, back pedal. All right. Super easy. We just talked that through in 2 minutes. That was an abbreviated version. He's doing 2 reps and 10 yards. And you can see he's gassed. So your athletes should be gassed. All right. Thanks. All right, guys, so thanks for checking out our dynamic warm-up and just a couple key points, and I'll leave you. Remember, we are planning on working in an outdoor setting in a team environment for this dynamic warm-up. So a lot of things that we're doing are synced and driven towards yardage. So that's step number one. Number two, make sure that when you're doing this dynamic warm-up, can't stress enough that it should mean something. The mental and the physical part have to be tied together. So if we're mindlessly going through it, we're not really gaining a lot. And if we're not paying attention to mechanics, we're not gaining anything from it. The other piece is that this is a maximum of 8 to 10 minutes. So you should have some leaders and some line leaders in your group, kids that want to be more aggressive, that want to take the lead. Put those guys in charge. Let them start to implement this plan. Not only will you see benefits in their preparation, mental and physical, you also see them start to work together more closely as a team. And then also one of the added side effects is a reduction in occurrence or chance of injuries. So remember, always keep all those pieces tied together. If you guys have any more questions, this is just step one of a much longer process. These dynamic warm-ups can get as complicated and as specific as you want to your sport and to your competition level. So if you do have questions, want to learn more, please feel free to reach out to us and email at any time. And other than that, look forward to seeing you guys at the facility. Thanks.